Hey everybody, we are so excited to be talking with you tonight. My name is Clay Horton. I'm one of the associate pastors here at Trietsch, and I lead the serving ministry here.
Thanks, Clay. My name is Doug Meyer. I'm one of the associate pastors, and I lead the caring crew, caring staff, peoples.
Hi, I'm glad you know what you do.
I know, it's really kind of uncertain.
Hi, my name is Jackie Watkins, and I'm the lay leader here at Trietsch.
I'm Daniel Humbert. I'm the general flunky. They call me the senior pastor, but every once in a while we do things together. So that's why we're here.
Yeah. I want to welcome you to the I Wonder podcast. So every Sunday night at 7 o'clock during Advent through the 16th, we are going to be gathering and I'm talking about questions that we have around Christmas, about Advent, and this whole season. So I want to invite you to participate. You can submit questions on Facebook. And Alyssa is behind the camera right now, and she will be gathering your questions, and she'll be passing them on to us. If we don't get to your question tonight, we'll hopefully get to it one of the other Sunday nights as well. So we'd love for you to participate and be a part of this. But all of this is to just get us thinking about Advent, to create a sense of wonder for us and wonder around the birth of Christ. And so Jackie's going to kick it off with our first question.
I'll start it off with the first question. What's the purpose of Advent? What are we tracking and why? And why not just celebrate Christmas Eve? So for me, the purpose of Advent is just to prepare my heart and to get it ready for Christmas and for Christ's coming. And if you think back to biblical times and when this is written, you know, the Jews were really going through tough times, and the thing that they wanted more than anything is this Messiah, the prophecy of the Messiah to come. So they had to wait and wait and wait for that. So we take 4 weeks to really focus on the virtues of Christ, and it gives us that opportunity to become more Christ-like through that. Here at Trietsch, whenever we teach our kids in the Anchor, I'm one of the Sunday school teachers there, and so it's wonderful because we teach them about virtues, and every month we have a new virtue that we're leading on. And so basically we're just going to cram that into these 4 weeks. We're going to do a love and a joy, and it's going to really center my heart. So for me, that's the purpose of Advent.
That's cool. I remember one of the things I learned in seminary that I never knew until that point was Advent was not only for the coming of Christ, it was also for the second coming of Christ, and to sort of prepare our hearts for when that happens as well. I always thought that was kind of cool because we don't focus a lot on that. So.
Well, and the symbolism of the wreath itself, the circle and the perfect unity between God and us. And
absolutely. That's cool.
Well, and it's a great pullback or whatever from, like kids get every kind of message about, here's what Christmas is all about. And it's usually all about what I need, what I want, I'm going to buy, or well, actually, no, you're going to buy for me. And so I kind of see it as a little timeout, that families can have and go, okay, let's remember, this is about baby Jesus' birthday, not you.
No.
And so maybe, it's just that reset. And, even as adults, we need that reset all the time.
I think that's what's good about the theme that we're going to start off with next week of anticipation. What is that all about?
Yeah. So I get the next question. Why is anticipation important? And has our culture lost the value of anticipation? Just to be irritating, the answer is yes and yes, and we'll move on to number 3. Or not. Anticipation, we're I want it and I can get it now world, right? Information you get at the ready. Food, I was with some friends this weekend and we ordered breakfast. They brought us breakfast. They delivered breakfast. So we don't have to wait. But the cool thing about waiting on stuff, and it sounds a little bit like, old guy here, but is it adds value to that thing you're waiting on. It helps you think about it. We talked earlier about, remember when you had to save for something. It added value. It gave you, plus, what a cool thing to anticipate having, getting, using, and it kind of narrows your focus. And in a way, maybe it backs into, I appreciate that so much more. If I don't have it right this instant, if I've had to wait for it, if I've had to think about it. I know for me, one of my little keywords right now is mindfulness, and it helps me think about what I think about. and it not be, well, I deserve everything right now. You know, it helps me linger a little bit on baby Jesus, and why did Jesus come, and what's Jesus about? And so that anticipation becomes kind of this space in my life for thinking and breathing and going.
Yeah, and I mean, you think of natural anticipation kinds of events like a marriage. I'm going to set a date, I'm going to plan and prepare and anticipate that it's coming, and it makes it a really cool event, right? And then the natural component that ties so well into Advent is pregnancy, right? We know we've conceived, we know we're going to have a kid, and then over the next 9 months, we're going to prepare. We're going to get ready. We're going to tell people, we're going to get rooms ready, we're going to register, we're going to do all kinds of stuff to anticipate, right? And it makes it that much more valuable when it actually happens. I think that's the value of Advent, and why we ought to, live into it.
Well, and even though we are the society now that can have and get whatever we want, information, etc., in a moment, when we pull out the Advent candle for our kids or grandkids or whoever that might be, and they get to put the next day on and the next day leading up to those 25 days, it's exciting. It's still exciting. So, it's nice to still think that in our hearts, anticipation is valuable to us. It makes it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the neat mindfulness is, as we step into Advent next week, we recognize that hundreds of years before Jesus came, the prophets were foretelling of a Messiah who was to come, this king who was going to get them ready. And I think that's the beauty of our connection between faithfulness as Christians and the tradition that led up to that. They were waiting hundreds of years, right? So another question is, was the promise of Isaiah 9, has it already happened, or are we waiting for it to happen? So I'm just going to read the text. This is the scripture for next week. And so Isaiah 9, verses 2 to 7, it says, "The people who walked in darkness will see a great light. For those who live in a land of deep darkness, a light will shine. You will enlarge the nation of Israel, and its people will rejoice. They will rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, and like warriors dividing the plunder. For you will break the yoke of their slavery and lift the heavy burden from their shoulders. You will break the oppressor's rod, just as you did when you destroyed the army of Midian. The boots of the warrior and the uniforms blood-stained by war will be burned. They will be fuel for the fire. For a child is born to us, a son is given to us. The government will rest on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His government and its peace will never end. He will rule with fairness and justice from the throne of his ancestor David for all eternity. The passionate commitment of the Lord of heaven's armies will make this happen." Man, that's powerful stuff, right?
It's worth waiting for sure.
I'm telling you. So, I mean, just those names, Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. This is, the author of Isaiah, I don't think was literally thinking of a guy named Jesus. But I do think he was recognizing that something powerful was coming and that a new reign was about to take shape. And certainly that's what they were longing for, right? And so the Israelites are all in anticipation of this possibility, of this wonderful gift that's coming. And so they're just like, yeah, let's get there. Can we see this? Will this be possible? And it takes hundreds of years, right? It takes hundreds of years, almost 800 years before Jesus is born. And yet, Jesus would be the fulfillment of these things, right? The little child. And he brings this new kingdom. Now, here's the reality that I think we all recognize. So, peace isn't real yet, right? I mean, we see glimpses of it. We capture some little possibilities of it. But I think what I'm still waiting for, and I assume we are waiting for, is this peace of God that passes all understanding, right? Mm-hmm. This peace of God that Jesus brought, but that we still are trying to capture. And so I believe Jesus brought those things. I believe Jesus is the everlasting Father, the wonderful Counselor, the mighty God, the Prince of Peace. But I think in our humanity, we've lost sight of what do we do with this and what do we do about it. And so the beauty of Advent, I think, is reclaiming that for us and reshaping our own lives. Rather than me, I want, I can get, what can I do for others? Because when all is said and done, peace, it's really not about me. but it's about what I can help bring about and what I can help make possible, right? So that's my hope as we start next week, is that we live into what is it that Jesus brought and how is it that we can make it possible. What do y'all think?
I like how, so like at the very beginning of that text, Isaiah talks about the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. And then when you flip over to the New Testament, John 8:12 says, again, Jesus spoke to them saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life.
Yeah, I mean, you turn back to John 1, and it talks about Jesus as the light of life, right? And that he brought that light into the world. So that's what we keep looking for, and what our anticipation is all about, is that we want to see that, know that, and then I am firmly convinced that the whole reason we don't see the full kingdom now, that we don't have it fully with us, is on us. That's not on Jesus. That's on us. And what is it we can do about helping bring that about?
Well, I think one of the cool ways we can bring that about, and this maybe chasing a rabbit here for a minute, is just how can we emulate Jesus to be the light? You know, I think there's no doubt that there's a lot of darkness in the world today. And in whatever sphere we enter, we can, in that space and in that time, be light. Or just the way we treat people fairly and kindly or politely even, and just recognize their humanity when so often we don't. You know, I know I sure don't, but you know, just trying to say, you are worth my time, you are worth eye contact, you are worth me knowing your name, I think brings a little bit of light in there.
Well, and that's what Christianity is all about, right? Like that's why I want to be a part of this, because I read this and I go, yeah, we need that. We need this Savior of the world who brings this light. And then we recognize, wow, the world still is dark, right? There's still places, and we get invited into this kingdom of God that Christ sets before us and says, wow, you get to be a part of this.
And the cool thing is you can do
right,
that. You can be the light.
Well, and it's so required. I think in any kingdom, right? Any nation, any government, no matter how strong the king, the ruler, the person who's in charge is, they can't do it alone, right? So even as powerful as Jesus is, right, Son of God, God himself, Jesus still needs us to bring that light. Jesus still needs us to demonstrate that peacefulness, to cultivate it not only in ourselves but in other people. And so I think that's what I'm anticipating. I mean, to me, that's the exciting part. And I love Advent. It's one of my favorite seasons because it really does help set the course for what it means for God to step into the world. So,
and I see how the Holy Spirit has put on different people's hearts that full vision of it, right? And we anticipate God's movement and presence in different places. And so we all have different places where we're called to serve, or we're called to be a part of that. And we anticipate it, right? Jackie, you're so involved in Mozambique, and that you anticipate a day where every single kid has access to the health care they need, the education they need. Like you lay in bed at night and you anticipate it because God has created you and desired you, designed you that way. And we all have that. As you work with people in recovery, or you anticipate the day where the room is empty because nobody is even struggling with any type of addiction, right? And that's why we do it. And so it's wholly beautiful, and it's
because that's the hope that we find in it, right? Is that we believe that it will happen at some point.
Otherwise, we give up, right? We go, nope.
So these people for hundreds of years believed that it was going to happen.
Right.
For hundreds of years didn't give up.
That's exactly right. And I mean, so that to me sort of cultivates why anticipation is so important. So, I mean, what's been an experience, Clay, maybe that you've had about anticipation that can help people out?
So, and these, as we think about anticipation, things that have happened within my own life, I think of those major milestones. We've mentioned kids, we've mentioned marriage. I think going through the ordination process was also a big piece. It wasn't, waking up one day and saying, I'm going to be a pastor. And then the next day, here it is, right? But it's seminary, and it's lots of training and meetings and conversations and praying. And so getting to those places where the next step in the journey, I think makes it a whole lot more meaningful, a whole lot more fruitful once we get to it. And so I think of those major milestones, and then I think we anticipate things even in our own lives, right? And as I was thinking of a place of anticipation this past year, that was just in celebrating my 10-year anniversary, right? Like, we've been talking about this anniversary. When we get to year 8, we've only got 2 more years until our 10-year. That sounds really big. And then we planned a trip, and the planning of the trip took a year, and we were gearing up for it. But we had so many conversations just sitting on our couch, talking about the trip and preparing. That was, building that connection.
Yeah.
And if we just gone on some random trip and woken up that day and said, where are we going to go, and just landed, it wouldn't be nearly as meaningful. But we had planned out the different things we would do and the people we would see, but in that there was a whole process that made it so meaningful.
Absolutely. I'll never forget, this is not recent, so our first child, in his birth, both our kids are adopted, as you know, and, we connected with the birth mom when she was just 4 months pregnant, so we missed out only on the first trimester. And so we got to anticipate with her, for 6 months, essentially, and to go to sonograms and those kinds of things, literally seeing him before he's born, and then to be in the room with her and as he's born, to anticipate what that looks like, to know that because we couldn't give physical birth, we had this opportunity to be blessed by somebody else offering us life and offering us a child, and waiting like everybody else the 9 months, but also knowing that this was complete gift, right? It wasn't anything we could create, anything we could do, anything we could make possible, and that anticipation made it all the more rich the day he was born, right? I mean, I just remember literally weeping tears of joy that he had arrived and that we had this rich blessing, right? And now he's a dad, right? And so I've got this 2.5-year-old grandchild, and on a very simple yet meaningful level, every time we know that Zaya's coming over, there's anticipation, right? There's the waiting of, I know he's coming, what shall we do? What can we play? How can we go do these things? How can I overcome these things? How can I recuperate? But the anticipation, I mean, it's simple, and yet it's deeply real, and it helps prepare for the time, for the occurrence, for the event, and it makes it all the more special, right? I mean, it's just
kind
amazing.
of like it adds depth and texture and richness to the moment. It's not just the moment, but it's the leading up to the moment. I was talking this morning to a church member about his retirement, and he just lights up when he was talking about, okay, it's 2 years away. I was like, 2 years away? That's forever. He goes, oh, no. We've done this. We just finished paying off our house. And he walked me through every step.
Is it wrong that I'm thinking about
Well, yeah. His name is Daniel Humper. But, just how cool is it? And just, I don't know, it just makes me go back to even the very beginning that anticipation is a good thing.
Yeah.
It is a good thing.
It is a good thing, and it adds seasoning. It just adds some depth to experiences.
Yep.
And so it's a pretty cool deal.
All right. So I have
Jackie, you have a fun one.
I have the next question. They gave it to me, and I wasn't really happy about it. How old was Mary? So the reason I'm not happy about it is because it kind of disturbs me to think about this child giving this enormous responsibility, and then on the other side of it, I feel this, and I just get really emotional and humbled by the thought that this child had the courage to say, whatever you want me to do, Lord, I'm going to do it. Yes, because as an old woman, I'm not sure I would have been able to do that with that much courage,
It's
right?
hard to fathom, isn't it? It's really hard to fathom.
It's hard to fathom.
I think of my own daughter who's now 14 and think, golly, that was probably the high end of Mary's age, right? And to think that a child, like you say, would say, let it be. I don't get it, but God, you say it, and I'm just going to live into it. And it's awe-inspiring.
Awe-inspiring, that's good.
It's kind of like, from innocence comes innocence. From purity comes purity. And because in any other formula, it you know, these are those moments that I have to suspend, like, oh no, come on, you know. But to imagine the birth of Christ in a what we would call traditional format also seems like, no, God's not going to do that.
Do you remember how old you were when you realized that Mary was so young?
I was actually probably older than I should have been.
Right.
Right.
I know I
Yeah.
was. Yeah. And you know, teaching youth a lot, I have been in rooms with kids that age.
Yeah.
And said, you know,
Oh my
change
God.
Whoa.
your age.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's so big that we kind of suspend it. We don't really think about it a lot.
Right.
I mean, I really couldn't even tell you. Maybe in seminary. I mean, I
Right.
don't know
mean,
that
I was
ever.
clearly an adult.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I was
Me
not a
too.
teenager or a child and then to also realize that Joseph was probably, you know, an older guy,
Yes.
right? And I don't know how old, but certainly a decade or two older.
Like our
So,
older,
Yes.
like old like you, or old
yeah, more like you.
like
old,
me.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So older then.
So on to the next debate. What the
Only
next
go off
question
the
is, what is your favorite song about anticipation or waiting, and why? And for me, it's "I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day," and that was a song that was composed. It was a poem that was composed during the Civil War, and the person composing it is talking about that both. We're celebrating the birth of Christ, this Prince of Peace, and yet the world is not peaceful. And just that struggle of, I'm anticipating when Christ's kingdom will be fully here. We're not at war. We're not hurting. There's no more bloodshed. And the wrestling with, wait, I hear Christmas bells. Do they mean anything?
Yeah.
Like, is this all for show? Like, does this do anything for me, for this world? And then the song comes around. Yeah. Christ is here. Christ is here, and when we all participate in that, and we get to see glimpses of that holiness that is Christmas, that is the reign of Christ in this world. So that I think that song connects with me because it's all about that anticipation, and sometimes I get frustrated because we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But I'm not even living through a civil war, and I think the author's son was sent off to war. You know, but it's
Yeah.
But to come back to that spot.
See, I own my my Advent nerdiness. I'm an Advent nerd. I really am. And so some of the songs that even when the question was addressed, I'm just all I can think of are hymns, right? And I'm old. I'm the guy that the worship team has to, you know, hold down to say we can sing a Christmas song in Advent, because I want us to sing only Advent songs, right? O come, Emmanuel, come thou long expected Jesus. One of the quote unquote newer ones, I want to walk as a child of the light, because I think what captivates me is there's this mystery in all of those songs. They're kind of in minor keys. The words are sort of, they make you feel holier than you probably are. And they just all talk about this anticipation, this waiting. And you're right, Clay, there's this tension between, I want to get there, I want the birth to happen, I want this joy, I want the light of Christ to come in. And yet there's this, I know I've got to go through the process. And I know that the waiting is not always what I want, but it's needful in order to make it, you know, better. I hate to make the analogy, but I'm going to. Holy Week leading up to Easter.
Yeah.
So if I don't experience the cross of Holy Thursday and Friday before Easter, Easter's not as special. It's clearly a great day, but it's not as special, right? Unless you see what it's necessary to get you there. Anyway.
It's I don't think this is an official word, but maybe it will be. It's the not yetness. I want to show up at your church all through Advent and sing Christmas carols, because you don't really get to sing Christmas carols any other time. But there is that sense of slow down, slow your roll, big guy.
Right.
It's that deliberate building upness to that. Just the phrase in my head just rings. It's such a dad or mom thing. Not yet. Hey, can we go to? Not yet. Used to hate that phrase. Hey, are we going to go do that? Not yet.
I live for that phrase.
Not yet. So, you know, the other nerdy thing I am is I didn't even think of a carol. I thought of that great
He's too young. He wasn't even born.
Heinz commercial. Wasn't it Heinz?
Yeah.
Anticipation. Carly Simon.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should sing that in worship. What do you think?
You should do it.
Could I do it and just hold the ketchup bottle up?
Yeah.
I'm on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
That'd be
Well,
fun.
well, now with the caps on the bottom, you don't have to.
I know. You don't have to. You just squeeze.
Going back to one of the other questions.
That's
We've
right.
lost
Yeah.
anticipation.
Yeah.
These young people today.
So
Yeah.
we Methodists, do we do anything different about Advent? You know, I don't think so. I don't know if Methodists created Advent. I don't think we did, right? I mean, I think it was created long before us, but I think we've kind of had a corner on the market for a long time. But, you know, I discovered, gosh, probably close to a decade ago, maybe not quite that long ago, that some other denominations and certainly some non-denom churches chose to take up the cause because they saw the importance of it. And some of you may recall this thing called Advent Conspiracy. It came out almost a decade ago. I don't remember the time frame. But the whole concept behind the Advent Conspiracy was that Advent really was about changing our culture and changing who we were in leading up to the birth. And so it was about spending less and spending more time with others and not focusing on so much of the rigmarole, if you will. And so it was called the Advent Conspiracy because it was sort of this sort of conspiracy to change the culture. And I loved it. And it was a fascinating way to both talk about and to experience this concept of anticipation. And so I don't know that we do anything differently. I think we have probably more traditions than some other denominations about it, and some of them are a little more entrenched. I mean, we heard about hanging of the greens, and I remember growing up doing hanging of the greens, and some of my first appointments doing hanging of the greens, and I actually kind of like it, but even it will, you know, it's a little too draggy, right? And then there's the hymns, and then there's the Advent wreath, and what all that means. I think a lot of folks are doing that these days. Yeah. And I think they're very helpful in getting us to the birth in a more appropriate way. So.
I think it just all goes back to that, what we said early on, that we're a culture with our foot on the gas pedal. Mm-hmm. You know, we got to go, we got to go, we got to go. And that go misses the now.
Right. I agree.
You know?
Wholeheartedly.
And, you know, just driving back from Houston yesterday, I was thinking, man, I'm going really fast. This looks like it could be a pretty area to drive through, but I'm missing it all. Mm-hmm. But I'm just blazing through it to get to my destination. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In a way, the same kind of thing with Advent and Christmas. Mm-hmm. We're just blazing through to get to, you know, if you're a kid, whatever's going to be under the tree or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of these incremental, and maybe that's the great thing about Advent or Advent wreath or Advent calendar, there's a stop. Breathe, be in the moment, then engage.
Yeah, I agree.
We asked a group of kids, about 25 kids in the room, and we asked them if they remembered what they had to have last year at Christmas.
Yeah.
What do you have to have? And I think 3 of them raised their hand that they remembered what it was. That means that 20-something didn't.
Right.
And then of those 3 said, "Do you still play with it?" No. You know.
It's lost, gone, broken. The batteries are dead.
Right. But if the
It's
gift can
whatever.
truly be becoming Christ-like, if the gift can truly be the anticipation of the next coming of Christ, imagine how that can change us and give us that.
I agree. I agree. Good stuff.
Okay, so I think I have the next one. What is the context behind Isaiah 9? Is it poetry, a prophecy, a history? How is it relevant to the Christmas story?
Oh, may I interrupt? We have a question from Justin. All right, Justin has the question, plus statement. Whenever I'm in a moment of waiting, of anticipating what's next, even when there's excitement, there's also a lot of stress I feel in that same moment. How do we avoid that feeling and find peace in the waiting?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a great question, Justin. No, I don't know that I have a perfect answer by any stretch, but I think that sort of becomes the point of Advent and the ways in which we sort of live into the moment, which is if I'm making preparation, I mean, a part of Advent is preparing, right? If I'm making preparations for that event that I'm anticipating, I guess maybe the better way to say this is the way I deal with it. I think there's some natural tension and natural anxiety that's helpful and healthful. To give you impetus and to give you sort of desire to move forward. And so to a degree, that anxiety's all right? But to the degree that it holds you back or to the degree that it kind of prevents you from fully moving towards it, I think that's where prayer or meditation or scripture reading or talking it out with somebody, all of those become helpful. And that, I think, builds the anticipation in the positive way, right? So,
I think a lot of that too is about naming it, own it, manage it.
Yeah.
And, okay, anxiety's just anxiety. It's not life-threatening. I mean, I guess it could be, but so, yeah, I'm anxious about, am I going to do this? Well, what's going to be is what's going to be. I got to take responsibility for my part in that. And, let go of some old anxiety maybe of, making it perfect or making it just right or finding the just right. Something is behind that anxiety,
right.
I think, driving it.
So I would think another way to say that is, where's the stress coming from, right? Is the stress coming from inside you because you think that you're not prepared enough to manage the situation or to be, whatever that stressor is. If it's about Christmas, you're not prepared for the gifts, you're not prepared whatever. Or is the stress coming from outside sources? And if it's coming from outside sources, for me, I tend to just try to stop and try to figure out, okay, why are they stressed? What's behind that? And then how can I be centered in my rightness to move forward so that the stress doesn't invade in you. So stress is a touchy thing. It's hard.
Yeah,
The more we talk about it, the longer I realize, like when I was a much younger dad, I would get very anxious at Christmas because I didn't feel like that I was going to be able to make Christmas magical like I thought my kids expected it to be. And now kind of in old man hindsight, I realize the magic was in the moment and being present and making cookies or doing this and that, not finding the magical present that's going to be forgotten, but just being extra present, extra patient, extra, stay up 30 minutes late and make cocoa or something like that. That's as magical as some, stupid electronic gift or something that I couldn't afford.
Yeah, I mean, what kids remember, and not that this is about kids, but I mean, they don't remember the toy,
right?
But they remember the time.
Yeah, that's right.
Remember the time you spent, and
But I always, when I find myself getting stressed, Mary's, when she learns that she will be the mother of Christ's child, just going back to that story is, I mean, and Advent,
you got nothing.
Yeah, exactly. My life is so much
the mother of God.
Yeah, but Scripture's full of like heroes in the faith, right? People that we go back to and we say, I need to be more like this person, and different people throughout the Scriptures lead us there. But Mary is my person when I'm feeling anxious, that I can go back to her and ponder her and think,
That's cool.
all right, what can I learn from her? How can she help point me towards Christ?
Hey, Clay, this is off topic, but on topic. I noticed you got some rasp in your voice.
Yeah, sorry.
Was that a little bit about anticipation of whether your
That
team
was.
would win or not?
Yeah, so I was at the Aggie game yesterday and
There was
screaming
some
through
great
7 overtimes.
anticipation.
But even that though, right? Like I've anticipated for the past month going to the game, and then we tailgate. I wake up that morning, put my shirt on, and tailgate, and all those pieces.
Was it a purple shirt?
No, it was not. It was a maroon shirt. But even as we speak through that, there's some Sundays I'm so busy that I care a lot about Aggie sports, and I know it's kind of dumb that I'm yelling at 20-year-olds sometimes. I'm not fully sanctified, I know that. But if I don't anticipate the game, if I just turn it on and it's a side deal, then winning or losing really doesn't matter that much to me because then I quickly move on. But when I anticipate it, I get so much more into it, and the win is so much better, and the loss is so much tougher. But it's just like Christmas, right? If I anticipate how Christ is going to move throughout Advent, it is a whole lot more meaningful than if I just throw on the Christmas sweater on the day of and celebrate it.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's my horse. I apologize.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Makes it fun.
Yeah.
Makes it fun.
We're all kind of a little jealous we weren't there. So our next question is pretty, I think it's really timely for all of us, regardless of our age or wherever it says. As we enter the Advent season, how do we stay focused on what matters? Instead of getting caught up in parties, activities, presents, do we have any tips for our families of all ages to explore spirituality during Advent? You know, I think we live in a highly distracted world. So anything we can do, any ritual that we can add to, capture, chisel out, set in concrete, okay, this Advent, we're going to have a meal together. Maybe we don't accomplish it every night, but one night a week, we're going to have a meal together. We didn't always do the big Advent wreath, but we put a candle on our table.
Yeah.
And it was a different kid's turn to light the candle and say, hey, what was your special moment today? Sometimes we would have lost our Advent devotional or this or that, but just claim the moment and there's something about eating by candlelight, and the candle reminds you.
Absolutely.
Kind of says, this is a special time.
Yeah. And
right?
one kid doesn't want to light a candle, right?
Yeah.
They want to light some fire.
Yeah.
And I still think the Advent wreath is very admirable. We did it when the kids were young. We've not done it for a few years now. But, it was fun to take that special time, light that candle, because, again, kids like to do it. And then, you say a brief prayer, or you just, like you say a comment about how the day went or why the day might have been special. I think that's helpful. Or the Advent calendars, like you were talking about. You can buy those almost anywhere.
Or you can make it at home with your kids,
Yeah, absolutely.
I sort of was thinking in a different way too, being the non-clergy on the panel here. Yeah, no.
I've got a certificate we can go.
Oh, thank you. Can you print one? Man, I knew this was going to help me somehow. There used to, when Black Friday became a thing, remember, everybody was all excited about Black Fridays, and then the news stories were always about people just beating each other up,
Craziness
to
to
try
get in
to
the
get,
store.
to get in the store. And this season, I've noticed so much more. Well, first, talk about anticipation gone astray. Black Friday started 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, then.
Because one day's not enough.
Yeah, well, right. But now the stories that I hear are not about that, but about Giving Tuesday. And,
cool?
and yes, and every place that I've been and checked out has given me an opportunity to donate to a charity at everything I've done lately.
How cool is that?
So to me, that is self-correcting right there, and it's teaching me and reminding me of what the season really should be about.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of opportunities, whether, you worship here at Trietsch or anywhere. This is a great time to teach kids about gift giving, and it's, there's a world beyond them.
That's correct.
Whether it's getting a coat here for a kid at Hedrick or CCA, or giving them an opportunity to drop some change in the red bucket when you go in a store. I think all of those give moments, give value. They're teachable, or whatever. And I think, it's worth to slow down and be intentional.
I was talking to a parent today, and he said he has a young child and friends with another family that's got a young child, and instead of exchanging presents like they have in the past years, they're going to get 2 boxes for love packs, and the kids are going to go to the store together, and they're going to fill the boxes with food for kids. And I was just like, that's it, right?
That's right.
And how much more are those kids going to remember that experience, connect with one another, and then more importantly, go, this is what Christmas giving is about. It's not just picking something at Target and then throwing it over there to this.
So that's a great example of a question we got from Chris. So might want to hear more of that. So it was talking about how do we get more spiritual at Advent, but specifically asks, and I'm going to paraphrase this, can spiritual Christmas and secular Christmas be blended in a way without diluting the message of Christmas?
Oh, wow. To me, that's a better way to ask the last question. So thanks, Chris. Number one, I say yes, right? I mean, there is a way. I mean, because here's the reality. We've lived into that for decades now. We've lived into the coalescing of spiritual Christmas and secular Christmas. And so, yeah, can they coincide? I think they can. I think the goal, at least my hope, rather, I guess, is my hope for Advent is that it helps us take more of the spiritual dimension and make it more the primary rather than the secondary. Because I do think what we've seen over the last many decades is that the secular has taken priority while the spiritual has taken secondary. And so the goal is they can both exist, we can both live together in harmony, if you will, but my hope would be, spiritual is more, right, or has greater priority. And to me, that has nothing more to do than with the spiritual practices, right? Just we live into prayer, we live into reading Scripture. To read that passage from Isaiah, for instance, not exactly a common everyday thing, right? I mean, it's not like, and yet there's huge richness in what that text has to say. And to just read that maybe every day or a verse of that every day for a week and then ponder, well, what does that mean? What does it mean for Jesus to be the wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace? What does that mean? To just ponder, wonder, what does that mean?
Well, and I think we all, at this point, we take inventories, right, of things we need to purchase. I've got a spreadsheet of all the things, all the gifts we're going to get.
Of course
right?
you do.
Of course, yeah.
Doug, don't you know
and a budget next to
I
it.
think
But
that's on a napkin in the back seat of my car.
but I've got this inventory of things I need to go purchase for family, etc. Right? But what I also need to do during Advent is to do that inventory for myself, right? Where are the things spiritually where I'm lacking? What am I struggling with? What am I ignoring? What do I need to give more time and energy to? Because that Christmas shopping list is something we do, right? I'm not going to just say, oh, I'm throwing nothing, no presents for anybody. But I have to say, how much time am I spending on this gift list? And how much am I spending on my spiritual inventory? And then after I look at myself, what do my kids need? What does my wife need? What does my family need spiritually? And are we living into that? And are we wrestling with that? And am I wrestling and spending more time with that? Or am I looking more at all the ads that are just bombarding me? Right? And if I can be honest with you, Black Friday just one ad after the other, and I've seen a lot more ads recently than I have scripture. Right? So I'm lopsided right now, and so I need to kind of do that correcting.
Yeah, no,
I don't think we have to, and this sounds, we don't have to give into the retail definition of Christmas. I think no matter what your faith tradition or no tradition, I think it's pretty easy to see that the world needs, like we said at the very beginning, light.
The light of the world.
And, whether it's by looking at Christmas lights, somehow trigger your mind to say, that thing is going to help me remember that it's more than what the next commercial says, and that I'm going to be that kind of person, whether it's in how I walk into Starbucks and order my coffee, or 7-Eleven, or whatever, however, I'm going to try to emulate that. And
we just got through with a series that talked about generosity, right? Clearly generosity, we believe, is a spiritual practice. And so Christmas, when all is said and done, is about generosity, right? God's gift to the world, and then how do we take that and become generous with it, with our time, with our talents, our treasures, that what you just described with the family, and giving to a child who actually does really need something, right? And so we can turn that generosity, we can still have the generosity, but turn it perhaps into a different format. There isn't nothing wrong with buying gifts for family or friends, but am I doing it because I want to enhance the relationship or simply demonstrate generosity, or am I doing it because I know I'm supposed to? Am I doing it because it's what everybody else is doing? That's life sucking. What we want is life giving, right? And generosity can be very life giving if we'll choose to do it in a very positive and life giving way. So.
Yep. Well, guys, it's been a lot of fun. I had fun.
Yeah.
You had fun?
Yeah.
Are you still nervous?
Yes.
Well, how was it hanging out with us?
That was the worst part.
Is it-
Hanging out with you is always a joy.
You read that just like I wrote it. Very good. Well, hey, we hope you had a lot of fun too, and maybe learned a little bit. We encourage you to send your questions to us, whether you text them, email them. You're hanging out here at Trietsch and you drop them in the question box out there at the information center. We'd love to hear from you because we all have things that we wonder about, right?
Yep.
And next week we're going to do a little bit more wondering, same time, same everything. You can find out a ton of info at tmumc.org. Next Sunday morning, why don't you worship with us?
Amen.
Either here in person or online, and if so, we'd love to see you. Have a
Hope you
great evening.
anticipate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See ya.
Bye.
Take care.